It's starting, and we're live.
All right.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Let's not
everybody.
stay silent.
Yeah,
It will be too weird.
it is. It's like a virtual cocktail party. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, how have you been while we wait for everybody else to show up and we can talk to things related to the course,
Yes.
just to do something useful and productive?
Yes. Well, actually, I just got related to the course. I just got an email from the Tableau public people, Jenny, inviting any students who are in the course that want to come to Tapestry to sign up and come for free.
Oh, wow.
Because you and I are both going to be at Tapestry.
Yes. Yeah.
And so she said that anyone who signed up and put that they were in the MOOC could have their registration fee waived.
Okay.
And that
Oh,
they would
that's
automatically be accepted. You have to apply to get an invitation, but she said they would automatically be accepted.
Yeah. When is Tapestry? I mean, I signed up, but I
Yeah,
don't remember when it's March.
March 1st.
March 1st. Yeah.
March 1st.
That's a Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, March 1st, because NICAR.
And you are going both to Tapestry and NICAR?
That's right.
That's great. I'm going to both as well.
Oh, good. Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
it would be great if some of the students of the MOOC show up.
Yes, that's right. So I think we can add that to the course announcements.
Yeah, well, yeah, we should. So what kinds of things have you seen in the conversations this week? I have been replying to messages today myself.
You have been today?
Yeah, I have. But
yeah.
What have you seen so far this week?
So I think this week some of the most interesting things have been the conversations about the ecological fallacy and using the data at different levels. And one person talked about the doing data analysis for the United States and how you often just count all the states as equal. You take a state average and then average that and call that the average.
And then average the average.
Right. And
super problematic.
Exactly. Or even it really depends on what question you're answering, whether you should take all the responses in the United States and average them as a national average, or whether you should control for the fact that people are organized in states.
Yeah. I'm curious about that. In which kinds of circumstances it would not be just an example of when it would not be appropriate to just get the entirety of the United States and average the entire population.
Right. Well, if what determines that answer is if the people within states are more similar to each other than they are to people in other states. So if you have two people, and if those two people are from the same state, they're much more likely to have a same response than if they're just any two random people in the United States. Then you have to control for the fact that they're in the same state. If it's just random and the state that you're in has no relationship to the likelihood of your response, then you can just take a universal average. It's also related, though, to how you collected the data. So if you took a simple random sample of people in the United States, then you could just average that. But if you collected data that's in any way related to where people live,
yeah, then you can average. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
So that's why there's no simple answer, right? There's not a one thing.
Yeah. Well, I really hope, as long as nobody's showing up, let's just talk to each other and get it recorded. And then this is being recorded, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, great. So and then you can be sharing the course, and everybody can see it and laugh at it. Oh, they're saying that we have 20 people now. Okay, so let's just keep talking. I hope that one of the main takeaways of the course will be that visualization is not just visualization. I mean, 80% or 90% of the work is what comes before. And there is this sense, Simon Rogers likes to say, data journalism is a new punk and stuff, right? And I kind of agree with that idea. I mean, the tools and techniques they have gotten much easier, and everybody can use them. And it's super easy to just get a tool, Tableau, Power BI, whatever, start using it.
Right.
But it's super dangerous to do that because you may download data sets and not
Right.
read metadata, and not read how the data was generated, not taking
Right.
into account things such as weighted averages and things like that. And then they end up creating graphics that are misleading. And even if you had the best of intentions, right? It's super, super dangerous. We have a question, I think.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they're telling us that the conversation will be available.
Yes.
in the platform.
I really strongly agree, Alberto, that it's very easy to make mistakes, even if you're very well-intentioned. And I actually think it's easier to make mistakes if you're very well-intentioned. If you want to lie with data, you have to have a fairly good understanding of how to manipulate it in order to lie.
You need to be careful to lie correctly, right?
Exactly. It's much, and it's much easier to accidentally lie.
There is actually a very important distinction here, and
Yes.
one of the lectures that I'm preparing, and one of the things that the talk that I would like to give at NICAR this year, if they let me, that still need to be decided. The title is a new lecture that I'm putting together. I'm going to title it a visual bullshit. Let's see if they let me use the title.
Right.
And I have been rereading the famous little book on bullshit, which makes the distinction between lies and bullshit. To be a liar, you need to know the truth, and you need to care about the truth enough to be careful to hide the truth, to conceal the truth. If you're just a bullshitter, you have a complete disregard for the truth. You don't really care, right? And you just say things randomly and outrageous stuff. And we have a perfect example in a very high office right now that amplifies right now what a true bullshitter really is, right? So it's super dangerous. And I completely agree. If you want to lie, you need to be an expert. You need to be truly an expert in manipulating the data.
Exactly. Right? It's very hard to lie with data.
Yeah, it's hard to lie with data if you don't read very, very carefully, right? Particularly in these days in which you can be called out in social media by people who know a lot about statistics and about data. So anyway, they're telling us that we have 20 people. So if you're listening to us here, please ask questions, and those questions will be directed to us. You can type them, and then Philippa will send it to us. And otherwise, we will just keep talking about random stuff. What new developments have you seen recently?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to answer your other question, which was, what do I most want to see from the course? Most outcome. The thing that I most want to see is an understanding that there's no recipe book that works. That's why we're not spending a lot of time saying, this is the recipe for this, this is the recipe for that. The only recipe that works is think really, really hard about what your question is. And use data to answer your question. It's very easy to find convenient data that answers a similar question than yours, but it hardly ever answers your question. And to answer your question properly with data, there's no recipe for that. But it's not unattainable. I think that what I really am hoping with this course is that people will understand that data analysis is complicated, but that it's completely attainable. And it doesn't have to be cloaked in all this sort of statistical rituals, like all these fancy words that people use sometimes
and formulas, and people are really scared of the formulas.
Right. It doesn't have to be this really magical ritual thing. It's actually, once you sit down and do it, it can be time consuming, but it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Well, there is an old saying. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were
no, go ahead.
Something else. No, I was just about to say that one of the things that I learned early on when I started studying seriously stats, is that statistics is not really a branch of mathematics. It's a branch of logic and critical thinking. And that's it. Right. Mathematics is just something that you use to verify your findings or to refute your findings. But it's a branch of logical thinking. It's based on logic. And probability, it's closely related to logic. It's based on logic. And then it's a mathematical form of logic, right? Right. And that's it. That's one of the key things to understand, I believe, to teach statistics correctly. Because one of the challenges that I see in teaching statistics, I remember my own experience taking statistics-related courses when I was younger, ages and ages ago. I remember that statistics was taught as mathematics, and mathematics-oriented people like that approach, but people who like myself, like mathematics. I love mathematics in high school, but I love critical thinking and reasoning much more than I love pure mathematics, right? So
Right.
that didn't appeal to me, and that's the reason why I didn't really get into this kind of stuff until much later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I was
Well,
an art therapist for 10 years before I got my advanced degree as a statistician. People always say that's such a big change going from being an art therapist to a statistician. I say, no, it's exactly the same thing.
it's exactly the same thing.
All you're doing
Yeah.
is looking for hidden patterns. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same.
I'm trying to understand it. We have a question. We have.
Oh, we do.
Could you
Oh,
maybe,
good.
yeah. Say, this is from. Oh, sorry. I think that I'm going to mispronounce your name. Lualinchus. Sorry about that. I'm terrible at pronouncing foreign names. Anyway, so very interesting question. Could you maybe please share an example of a way that manipulating data has changed perspective on a story? Your perspective on a story. I have an example, but perhaps you want to go ahead and get started.
No, you go first. You go first. I don't have it off the top of my head.
So I'm going to share my screen because I have these. So there's, as you know, after the presidential elections in November, the left and the right started, fighting each other against if Donald Trump was more popular than Hillary Clinton, if the fact that Donald Trump won the electoral college but didn't win the popular vote, etc., etc., and liberals attacked Trump because of that, and conservatives try, particularly Trump supporters, not all conservatives are Trump supporters, obviously, but the Trump supporters started fighting back, saying that, well, but Donald Trump, I mean, he may not have won the popular vote, but he won in a majority of counties in the United States. And there is a terrible website which is brimming with bullshit, with actual bullshit, called InfoWars. And I'm trying to find the example over here because InfoWars was promoting a while ago a map of the. Let me just share the screen over here. A map of the United States, who won on each one of the counties. So if you take a look at the map, which is this here, and actually I wrote a post about it, a title, "Now More Than Ever, Call Out Data and Visualization Bullshit." So this is the map. And obviously, if you take a look at it, it seems that it's like an ocean of red, right? It's like huge amounts of red and tiny, tiny amounts of blue here and there, blue corresponding to vote for Hillary Clinton and red vote for Donald Trump. But obviously, you need to be aware. I mean, people are not aware of the fact that counties have huge differences in terms of population, right? So if you don't take population into account, I mean, if you take a look at, for example, at the middle part of Florida, this part over here is much more sparsely populated than the Miami-Dade area down here, or Fort Lauderdale. If you scale the size of these counties up and down, depending on the amount of people who live there, the picture will be much more different. I mean, you will see that actually the Democratic Party got a majority of the vote, of the popular vote, even if Donald Trump ended up winning the election. And this is the kind of argument not just bullshit websites like InfoWars are making lately. Even since Spicer from the White House is making the same kind of argument. He's saying, but Donald Trump won on a majority of counties. But that's not what really matters. What matters is the electoral vote, for sure, and the popular vote, not the number of counties. The number of counties is completely meaningless. Right? But this can change your perspective if you're not aware of this variable, of this fact, right?
Yeah, that's a really good example. That's the unit of analysis example. Are you counting
the unit of analysis, right?
Are you counting
or
people?
The baseline? What is the base of the population, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The denominators are much more important than numerators.
Numerators, that's correct. And so, yeah, that's an example, but there are many others, right? Do you have one?
Yeah. Well, I think the example that I would say really inspired me that you need to do analysis, not just summary, is I was working in a community that had a really high level of youth suicides. And it had just recently happened. So there was kind of a crisis, a youth suicide crisis, and different people were collecting data. And one of the groups had a mandate. You may have seen me talk about this at IO. One of the groups had a mandate that was based on gender. And so they collected data and divided it between boys and girls. And it looked sort of like, well, it was very much the boys that were in trouble for mental health. And then another group had an ethnicity mandate, a nonprofit group. And so they took the same data and divided it up by ethnicity, and it looked like this certain ethnicity was the one in trouble. And then the third group was the school boards, and they thought that it was the poor kids. So they took the same data and divided it up, and it was the poor kids. But if you took all those three perspectives and put them together, rather than the simple dichotomies, but you actually looked in a holistic way at all three of those at the same time, you got an entirely different picture. It was actually sort of the rich girls of color, not the boys, not the poor kids, but the rich girls of color that were the most at risk, which you never would have seen if you hadn't taken the time to do a complex analysis. That was the one that really kind of shook me, actually, because I thought, if we had just taken these tables, which are not wrong, right? The tables weren't wrong. And that it was that made me understand you can even do the right analysis. But if you don't take the analysis far enough or deep enough or complex enough, you will be well-intentioned, telling not the truth.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Mislead yourself, right?
And when
again, that's
exactly.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that situation really affected me because kids were dying. And I thought even people who are trying to help these kids that are dying are doing it wrong. Certainly not from a bad intention, but just from it's essential that we get as much data analytic literacy out into the world as possible. Yeah. I think there was another question popped by.
Before we go do we cover, I don't remember, do we cover Simpson's paradox in the course?
I don't use the word Simpson's paradox, but we definitely do an example of it.
Yeah,
but,
mix exam, mixed results.
Yeah. Well, Simpson's paradox is actually a really specific subset of the ecological fallacy. And we covered the ecological fallacy this week, and we'll come back to it again in I think, week 5. But the Simpson's paradox is a specific example of looking at a different level of analysis. Yeah. The ecological fallacy. Okay, we have Sue from Oregon.
We actually have another one before by
somebody before that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
you're better than the chat box than me.
Messed up. Yeah.
Okay,
Do you want to read that one?
I can't see it. I can't see it.
Okay, I can read it. So it's from Andy. In my field today, there was a news article released citing a study that clearly misinterpreted a data set. What is the best way of calling out a journalist who reports on such improper data? That's a great question. How do you do that?
It's a really, really good question, because I see it all day, every day. I not just other journalists, but in my peers, in my people who are paying me to do things for them. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And what do you do?
Well, I really think it depends on a number of different things. I think it depends on what the error is. I think it depends on whether the error is sort of a technical distinction or whether it really changes the results. I think it depends on your relationship with the person. And I think it depends on the subject matter. So for my example of the young people who were committing suicide, I would have done anything to make sure that analysis was corrected and done properly, because it was actually immediately affecting the lives of children that I was living near. If it's sort of just which is your favorite Friends character kind of a data analysis, where it's not really affecting anybody's life, but it would be good for the public to see that this was, not done correctly. I would contact, not in public, I would contact in private the author or that journalist and say, and I have done this. I mean, I worked with 538 for a number of times, and we had quite a number of kind of behind the scenes conversations about, I don't think this was done correctly. I think this should be done differently. And then hopefully it becomes a conversation in the public sphere, but I would approach them privately first. But again, I think if I don't know the person and the person's not responding to me, and it really is a vital piece of research that's going to lead people in the wrong direction, then I would have a public conversation about it.
Yeah, have a conversation about it.
Maybe not on Twitter, because that's 140 characters, is very hard to do, but maybe tweet a link to a much longer, like you do, Alberto. I see you do it all the time. Like you write your long thought out piece on your blog, and then you link to that on Twitter. I'm not a big fan of having any kind of a conversation on Twitter that's not sort of just fun, but having a, you know, a deep methodological conversation on Twitter. For me personally, this is probably because I'm old.
Yeah. I have a slightly different approach. I mean, when I see a problem, I see that as an educational opportunity.
Yeah.
Not only for whoever did the story, but for anybody else. So I try to call it out in public, but I strive to be as polite and constructive, and I try to only call out things that I have done myself, and I try to be very clear about that. I say, you know, I have done this myself, and this is wrong, and this is why it is wrong.
Yeah.
And or perhaps not wrong, because wrong is a very strong word, but it could be improved, right? There's some room for improvement. Perhaps it could be done this way or that other way. I think that both approaches are appropriate. I think that there is merit in only contacting the person in private, but I don't know. I struggle with that a little bit. I think that making it public sometimes can also improve global, general understanding of these things.
And you know what?
That can help other people.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think if it has been made for public consumption, if somebody has published something, then it's in the public for discourse. And I agree. I don't think there's any problem with doing it in public, especially Alberto. You do it in such a respectful way that it's different than a kind of a troll sort of approach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you don't attack people just because you have been in the same situation. Right.
Like, of course. I mean,
we always screw up, right? And we keep screwing up, right?
Exactly. So I
okay, we have more questions here.
Okay,
questions here. Should we go ahead or?
Yeah, I think we should. Is the one from Sue the next one? I can see that one.
Yes.
All right, I'll read that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Sue from Oregon says, could we create a group document online with great data viz resources and websites that all the students could access? I think the short answer to that is yes. We have already a very good shared online document where we're collecting sources of data repositories, and I think we could probably do the same thing. And Alberto, you already have one, don't you? Don't you maintain one on your website?
Yes, but I need to update it. So I believe that Sue is also interested in data visualization resources, perhaps examples and things like that. I have one on my blog, but I have not updated it in more than a year, I believe. So it's really old and very unorganized. I'm going to share it in the chat window, but it can be found through my blog, thefunctionalart.com. If you scroll down right underneath the cover of my books, there is something that says list of resources or something like that I share with my students, blah, blah, blah. There's like a semi-hidden link, a list of resources that I use in all my graphics classes. So this is the link. It's a long list of articles and tutorials and video lectures on things. So not necessarily examples of data visualization, but more articles about data visualization. Now, what I also have, and this is going to be exclusive for now for the people who participate in the course, is a very unorganized text file that I share with my students at the University of Miami, in which I put things that I like. So I like something today, and I copy and paste it in that document. So that document is quite unorganized at the moment. It's literally a TXT file. So with tons of examples of visualizations and things. I have copied it into Dropbox in a Dropbox folder. So I'm going to share the link there. So let's see if Filipa can share it with everybody or I don't know if they are actually seeing the chat window. But if not, I can also share it in the course, perhaps in the instructors forum. And we have now one from Ignacio Alcalde. In the latest Tableau public, the state of data education in 2016 report says analytics programs overall are growing rapidly. How much importance plays the statistics and analytical skills in data visualization. Which are the basic analytic skills set? Do you need to be a good data visualization professional? Wow.
Yeah.
What do you need to know, right?
Well,
What,
I would say it's a very basic bottom line thing that you have to have is not.
I can also share it in the course, perhaps.
Sorry, something weird is happening to my chat. I can hear too. I'm going to shut this one. I would say more important than any mathematical skill or an understanding of any kind of statistical model building is an understanding that you're dealing with uncertainty, that if you're dealing with data, you are dealing with uncertainty. And most people come to me as a statistician to help take away the uncertainty. And I cannot do that. As a statistician, all I can do is help them understand the uncertainty and maybe help them become comfortable with the uncertainty. But I think if you want to be a good data visual professional, you need to understand, bottom line, the data is never saying this is the truth. The data is saying this is what we can tell right now, and here's the uncertainty that surrounds it. And I think any skill without that understanding is not worthwhile. And so I think that's the most important thing that we're really trying to communicate in this course. And then if you talk about specific skills, what would you say, Alberto? I think you might be better to answer that question.
So, I mean, I have been working in this field for 20 years now, and the more I talked about it in the True for Us somehow. The more I learn about it, the more you discover your huge lack of understanding of areas that you're supposed to know about. So, and that is like a never-ending process. I mean, I would say that the first thing, I mean, I agree with you. The foundation is to have a good understanding of probability and uncertainty, which is because statistics is all about dealing with probability and uncertainty and trying to not so much to tame them, but to understand them and assume them when you're analyzing the information. That's a good foundation. Getting a good foundation on basic elementary probability thinking and the different schools in probability thinking, frequentists and Bayesians, etc. Reading a little bit about the philosophy of probability is also quite enlightening, I must say. But then obviously you need to learn a little bit about stats. I mean, statistical reasoning. So at the level of stats 101 at least. Yeah. And then have the journalistic skills and being humble enough to always know that you should not publish any visualization story without consulting with experts. So because you can certainly do exploratory analysis, you can discover interesting outliers and trends and patterns in the data, but that's exploratory. It's not confirmatory. To do the confirmation, you need to go, just take your analysis and say, hey, take a look at what you have found. You're doing a story about politics or economics. Well, you will need to go to economists and political scientists and show them what you have found, and then ask them what they think about that, right? Yeah. And then you can go ahead and produce your story. And then in terms of visualization, the actual production of the information, well, you need to get a good grasp of design. Obviously, visual design is important: typography, color, interaction, UX, etc. And then have a good understanding of elementary principles of visualization, such as visual encoding, so when it is appropriate to use different graphic forms depending on the message that you want to convey. I would say that those are and then be a good storyteller in the sense of a good narrator, right? Not someone who makes up stories, but someone who is able to structure information in a way that can be understood by human beings, right? Yeah. That's also a good skill to have, yeah.
And that is that's a tall order, because to ask for all three of those things in the same human is often challenging. So I think knowing what you're good at and what you need help with is also really important. Knowing
specialize a little bit on something, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's great. As Alberto said, I'm a really strong believer in doing your own exploratory data analysis. Get your hands dirty, play in the mud. Don't publish it as the truth without running it by an expert in the field, in the same way that you wouldn't, diagnose yourself with a disease without seeing a doctor. You know, we all Google on WebMD and do some exploratory analysis and stuff, but you wouldn't do surgery on yourself without talking to an expert. It's the same thing with data visualization. You need to talk to somebody who understands best principles, and it's not just like pick a color. There really are scientific principles behind data visualization, and then a basic set of skills that will let you avoid telling accidental lies with the data.
Yeah.
More of the time. I think we're
super challenging.
Yeah, it's very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. We have two more questions. One is from Pretty Irani saying, I don't know if I understand this correctly, but let's see. It says, the question says, how do you encourage writers to focus on solutions addressing problems and not only identifying problems with data? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's a huge question as well. We're getting very very broad questions. I think it's a real problem. I think it's much easier to, on a surface level, to use data to show what the problems are. However, really good statistical analysis can approach causal analysis. It can approach telling you what's causing something to happen. And if you can get a good analysis on what's causing something, or even what might be causing it, you have a much better chance of doing what you're asking, which is identifying solutions. And I think another way, how do I encourage writers? I think that's a lot about also working in a team. It's very easy for one person to get focused on the sort of the problem or the gap that the data might be highlighting, and then there'll be other people on the team that will say, so what? I mean, the so what important is such an important question in all data analysis. They always make sure there's somebody on my team, whatever I'm doing, whether it's journalism, whether it's for a government, whether it's, you know, trying to end violence against women in Nepal. There's got to be somebody on the team, and their main job is to say over and over again, so what? Who cares? So what? Who cares?
Yeah.
What do you think, Alberto?
Well, I don't have a very good answer for this, but it's certainly a it's certainly a problem that people focus on the problems rather than focusing on possible solutions. I think that both things are important. I think that there is a role in journalism and in visualization and data analysis, etc., to identify problems that our communities or globally are facing. That we play a role in that, identifying potential challenges. Now, we also play a role in spreading the word about possible solution to those challenges, right? So the most common example nowadays, which is very timely, climate change. How do you face climate change? Well, I mean, it's like we know that climate change is real. We know with a high degree of certainty that it's humans that is causing climate change. And we know with not so high certainty, but with reasonably high certainty, that climate change is going to provoke rising sea levels and droughts and a lot of different challenges. Those are the challenges. And they need to be highlighted and they need to be explained because people don't embrace the evidence behind those assertions. And it's important that they do. It's important also that they understand that there's an uncertainty in the data. It may be possible that nothing is really happening, right? That there's not going to be rising sea levels, that there's going to be droughts here and there. But, you know, 9 out of 10 possibilities probably this is going to happen. So we need to base our analysis and our decisions on that high probability. And then there are also proposed solutions, right? Proposed solutions to those problems, controlling the amount of CO2 that is sent to the atmosphere. Now, is that going to affect the atmosphere? Is that going to help fight against climate change? Well, again, with a reasonably high certainty, we can say that will help. We are not absolutely sure, and that level of uncertainty needs to be mentioned, but we know that can help. Therefore, that's the call to action. We can say, well, this is like, if you go, and we need to do that. The call to action, by the way, I have been reading quite recently about the literature about risk communication. One of the problems that we have, I believe, in data visualization and journalism is that we tend to focus too much on percentages, probabilities, etc. It's hard to wrap your head around those things. It's much better to use analogies and to use also what an author, his name is Gerd Gigerenzer or something like that, says we need to focus on natural frequencies. So rather than say there is a 80% probability that this is going to happen, say there's a 1 out of 5. There's a 4 out of 5 chances that this is going to happen. And if you go to the doctor and your doctor says there's a 4 out of 5 chances that you're going to get cancer, if you keep doing this, you will stop doing this, right? So that kind of talk, which is much more straightforward and it speaks to an emotional level, is much more effective, at least with most people, than the mathematical-based communication. That still needs to be there. It still needs to be shown, it still needs to be revealed, but it can also be translated in a way that normal human beings can understand.
That's really helpful. I hadn't heard that. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that.
I can recommend that book to you. It's called, I actually have it somewhere over here. I have tons of books here in my office. So I believe that it's called Calculated Risks. Let me look for it just for a second.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because that's great to keep going with your question about encouraging.
That's correct.
I think this suggestion is good.
It's a book that I recommend to anybody who's interested in communicating data, and it's called Calculated Risks.
Oh, great.
This is the title. And this is where I got this idea of using natural frequencies whenever it is possible. 1 out of 5, 4 out of 5.
Right.
Right? That sounds much less precise than 67, 73%, right? But the thing is that the uncertainty surrounding that data point is so high that it's equivalent to say, 4 out of 7, right? Or 4 out of 5. It's the same thing.
Precisely. I mean, there's no 0.25 that's real in your estimate of probability. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from our office hours.
Yeah, well, I'm planning to write about this in my next book or something.
I know. You already have a deadline for your next book, I believe.
Actually, it's a self-imposed deadline. The middle of 2018.
Which
so
is
it's soon. It's like 1 year from now. But I really want to get that book out as soon as possible and close the trilogy of books, and then move on and start writing about gardening or something. All right, we have another question here. So this comes from Tanya. She says, what do we do when a piece based on misinterpreted data goes viral? This is related to a previous question, but it's much more relevant. It goes viral, lots and lots of people share it and read it. What do you do? What do you do to fight against that, right? What do you think?
I think it's brutal. I think this is where I am definitely with Alberto, that you do need to discuss it in public, and you need to be really specific. If you can show very specifically the data is misinterpreted, and now I'm going to throw in what Alberto just said, and do so in human terms. I think for somebody like me, who's a trained mathematical statistician, you can accidentally, especially when you're feeling upset and emotional, you can accidentally sort of fall into your old habits, which is to talk very technically and use big words and to try and impress with your statistical knowledge that you are an authority, that this data is incorrect. But nobody's really impressed with very few people who aren't already statisticians are impressed with your statistical knowledge. So if you're actually trying to counteract something that's gone viral, you need to address it at that level, which is an emotional level. Something goes viral, it's because it's touching an emotion. Find a way to reach back and touch that emotion again with something that's more true, which is really hard to do.
It is hard to do, yeah, but there's something in there. I really like what you said about impressing people, because if you use a mathematical language, you will not impress the general public just because they don't understand what the hell they're talking about. But you're not going to impress statisticians either, because they know as much as you do about that, right? So you're not impressing anybody by using jargon. So you need to avoid
exactly.
I didn't think about that before, but that's completely right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the emotional level is super important. But I would like to expand on the question. What do you do when you contribute to spread the bad data or the bad graphic? And I have a specific advice on that because I have done that myself. So a while ago, 2 or 3 years ago, someone made up a chart and he or she styled the chart as if it were a Fox News chart, and saying, take a look at the bullshit that Fox News is spreading or whatever. And based on precedent, obviously, Fox News is not known for its visualization accuracy. I retweeted the graphic, and then to my horror, 1 hour later, I discovered that it was completely fake. So what did I do? And my tweet was retweeted like 300 times, something like that. So here's what I did. I wrote a blog post, and I tweeted at 300 people. The 300 people who had retweeted my tweet, I tweeted at them saying, the same tweet is like, I tweeted this thing, it is wrong, please retweet that this is wrong, right? To the same 300 people. Did that help? I don't know. It took like 3 hours or 4 hours to correct that mistake, but I think that it's worth doing that. We all have, regardless of what the background that we have, regardless if we are, journalists or whatever, as citizens, concerned about the future of truth and the future of facts and the future of evidence, I think that we have a responsibility, a civic responsibility, to contribute to an environment in which facts prevail.
I very much agree with that as a citizen obligation.
Sorry, I get a little bit fired up with these kinds of things, but the fact that we are seeing so much bad information nowadays, right? It only seems that it's only going to get worse, right? It's like, who can you trust, right? So we need to be careful with that. Perhaps we need to create a new curriculum on media literacy and spread the word out among high schoolers, for instance, right? Because
I think high school is high school is a very good suggestion, because that is the age at which you need to teach the basic fundamentals of data literacy. Is high school. University is too late, and university is too selective. Good. I'm not as familiar with the education programs in the States, but in Canada, we have statisticians. My husband is one of them. We have statisticians that go into the high schools, and it's actually sponsored by our National Statistical Agency, Statistics Canada. And people go into the high schools and teach concepts of uncertainty and probability and how to consume. So not with the idea of teaching everybody to be a statistician, but teaching to be good consumers of quantitative evidence.
But I would even go beyond that. Sorry, I'm getting your response with some delay. That's the reason why it seems that I'm interrupting you all the time, I think.
Yes, you're not interrupting me. Go ahead. You're not. There's just a delay.
Okay. So I was about to say that I think that the problem goes beyond that. It's not just quantitative. It's just logic. It's like evidence in general. What constitutes evidence? What constitutes a reliable source? What constitutes a proper process of verification before you retweet something or share something? Those are skills that used to belong just to professions like journalism, statistics, the sciences, etc. They don't belong to us anymore. I mean, they didn't belong to us in the past. They shouldn't have belonged to us in the past. Even more so in the present. I think that people need to learn verification, journalistic verification, like contrasting two sources, for example, two or three sources, right? And we need to spread. So what we used to call media literacy in the past, right? We need to expand that concept in order to create a program that is, I don't know, assessing evidence. Or that's a bad name for a course for high schoolers, right? I would actually call it bullshit or something, just to make it more attractive, right? To high schoolers.
Right.
But teaching, it's not right to share things before verifying if they are right or wrong. I mean, how do you assess if this is probably true or probably not true? You will never be able to tell if it is completely true or absolutely untrue, but more probable or less probable, right? Like taking a look at the source, taking a look at the publication that publishes it, taking a look at the evidence and how the evidence is outlined, taking a look at the primary sources. It's a lot of work, but we need to teach that this is an ethical obligation for everybody. It's not just something that only nerds should do. It's an ethical obligation for citizens, I think.
I very much agree with you that it does go much beyond just the quantitative evidence. And the other part, what you're describing, work, and I think that's the other half of this equation is, and I know you're very active around this, is put your money where your mouth is. Sort of, what do you pay for? Do you buy? It's very expensive to produce good evidence, whether it's scientific evidence, whether it's data journalism, whether it's a health study. It's very expensive to produce good evidence because you can't do it fast. There's no way to automate it. I'm constantly being asked, can't you just automate this? I say, no, I cannot automate this.
Be a person. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's going to cost money, and we need to invest in that at all levels, not, in long form journalism and probably courses.
Yeah, of course, and we need to support the people who are doing good work, and that they are doing their jobs, right? So you're absolutely right. I mean, I have been very active trying to convince people to choose their favorite journalism out there. It could be in the United States, it could be NPR, it could be the New York Times, the Washington Post, your local newspaper, your local TV station. It doesn't really matter. It can be ProPublica. Just choose 1, 2, 3. Even 4 or 20, like I do. I'm a little bit crazy. I subscribe like to 30 different publications, but I don't do it because I can read them all. I cannot really read them all. I don't read the Washington Post every single day. I can't. But I do it because it's like putting your money where your mouth is. I think that this stuff is important. Yeah. All those people make mistakes, right? This is one of the things that some people who are very critical with the media don't understand. Is that they say, oh, but the media is telling this and it was a lie, etc. It was a mistake, etc. Well, true. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, right? But one of the things that these organizations do that other organizations don't do is to try to correct those mistakes. So whenever there is a big mistake, they try to correct it. I mean, they may do it, better or worse, but they try to correct it, and they try to control themselves and verify what they publish. And we need to support that because it's a I tweeted this the other day, and some people thought that I was exaggerating, but it is not true. This is the journalism, and remember that I'm talking about journalism as a specific profession, but as a state of mind. For me, journalism is a state of mind. It's like verification, distribution of good information. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do journalism, right? Gather information, verify the information, and present that information to other people who may benefit from that information. Right? You can do that being a statistician or a scientist or whatever. Right? Many scientists do journalism, right? Well, anyway, so people who do it for a living need to eat, right? And they are part of what I call society's immune system against certain very worrying tendencies, right? There are certain worrying trends that we are seeing nowadays in many countries, like the rise of populism and radical nationalism and xenophobia and and even authoritarian tendencies in some countries. I mean, these kind of evidence, this kind of spreading the word about what is more likely to be true, and be honest about it and fair about it and open-minded about it and being open to other voices, needs to be supported with our money. There's no other way we can survive if we concerned citizens don't pay for it. I mean, we need to contribute to it.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't have any other question that I see here, so it's almost I've been talking for almost 1 hour.
Yeah, we've maybe come.
Oh, we have another one.
Oh.
Okay, so also from Patrici. I don't know if this is a lady or is a woman or a man. So I'm going to just say the question says, on NPR this morning, I was listening to a summary of a famous study that said that we are feeling creatures who happen to think. How do we appeal to the emotions so people hear the facts? These questions are amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
That's a very good question.
Want to go ahead?
No, you're going to have to go first on this one. I think you've done a lot more thinking about this one than I have.
Yeah, I've been thinking, and this is one of the reasons why I joked before that I would like to write my third book and then move on and do something not entirely different but related. So there has been a lot of talk about rising empathy with data visualization and things like that. I don't think they really think that we can do that. Nobody's going to feel empathetic by seeing that 500,000 people are suffering in Syria. You need to see that suffering in order to feel it. All right, we are human beings. We are not moved by numbers. We are moved by the people who are behind those numbers. The numbers are important. We need to show the numbers. Don't get me wrong. One of the problems with journalism in the past is that we show the human face without showing the aggregates, and we show without showing the numbers. Now in many places we see the numbers without seeing so much the human faces. We need both. So if you're talking about the impact of the ban that has been imposed in the United States right now, I think that many journalists are doing it correctly right now, because they don't just tell you the amount of people who are being stranded in other countries and they cannot come back, and families that are separated. They show you all those data points, and they may design the map and show you all the points and the numbers and the comparisons, etc. That we need to do that. That's the data visualization part. But then we need to show the stories. I mean, we need to show the people, right? We need to show the face of a 12-year-old Syrian girl who looks exactly like your own girl. Right? It's like you see the connection. That's the only way you can, because otherwise people. One of the problems is that one of the sources of xenophobia is the fact that we don't see other people as people. We see them as abstractions, and that is a problem with numbers. That we see them as they are abstractions, and they are useful abstractions. We cannot get rid of them. They are useful for analysis. They are useful. They need to be shown in stories. But we need to show the human connection, so that we cannot escape from that. So I believe that the approach in the future will be to, and we are seeing this already in many publications like ProPublica, which is doing a great job at highlighting the human side of the ban of the crisis, of the refugee ban crisis, by showing the faces of the people who are suffering. And the New York Times is also doing is to go back to a model of integrated multimedia stories that combine a little bit of text, that combine the photographs, the video with the graphics. It's not separating things, right? It's not just the data journalism. Data journalism is just one of the components of this integrated, holistic whole, right? That we need to present in order to convince people of how important these stories are. Hello?
Hi. Yeah. I think there's a delay.
Sorry.
I think that's absolutely right. I think I really liked how you said data journalism is one piece of the puzzle. Data journalism does not present the entire story, and that it's the sense of connection. And I think that the data journalism it's kind of like saying, how can we get to the right side of the brain by only working on the left side of the brain? Well, you can't, and you're going to need both halves to get the full picture. You really need to appeal to the emotions, and then have some type of evidence, whether it's data or something else, to help give some structure to the emotions that those actions to the actions that those emotions are going to lead to. It kind of circles back to our other question is, okay, now that we've got your attention with the emotions, how do you take action? So what do you do with those emotions? And the data can provide a structure and say, well, we think that this might be caused by this, or we think that this is possibly related to this. So I think I really liked what you said about the holistic multimedia picture.
Created by groups, right? I mean, not
exactly.
One person will be able to produce the photograph, the text, the visualization, the video. I mean, you need to work with people with different expertises, right?
Right. Yeah. Created by groups.
All right. Well, I think that we all have been talking for an hour, so I think
that's probably the perfect note to end on.
Yeah. We can wrap it up until the next time, I think.
Yes. All right.
Well,
thank you for joining us, students. The MOOC has been going great, and thank you for spending the time, Alberto.
Yeah, well, thank you also for spending the time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm looking forward to see. Well, we are going to have probably a couple of other hangouts like these, and the video will be made available to all the students. And then I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in March
I know. It'll be lovely. Thanks.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.